Welcome back, everybody, to Ein Sof Learning. Thanks for joining me after our 2-week break that we've had on this channel because of the Chagim. We had Rosh Hashanah, then Yom Kippur, then Sukkot, then Hoshana Rabbah, then Shmini Atzeret, then Simchat Torah. And now we are starting to read the Torah from the very beginning, from the book of Bereshit, chapter 1, verse 1. Because we finished this cycle just a couple weeks ago. Right now it's October 19th. It's a Sunday that I'm recording this. This upcoming week is Parashat Noach. We just started the book of the Torah once again. And with that, I decided I want to start a new series on the book of Genesis, the entire book of Bereshit, the first of the 5 books of Moses, but with the commentary of Rashi. We're going to go through the verses in the book of Bereshit with the commentary of Rashi. And who is Rashi? If those that are watching have never heard of the name Rashi, it could very well be that you've never stepped foot in an Orthodox synagogue, because Rashi is the most talked about, the most famous, the most sought after commentary that every person with a basic knowledge in Torah is expected to have when it comes to learning the Torah. If you learn Torah and you don't learn Rashi, people scratch their head and say, How could you do that? Because Torah, everybody knows. In the Orthodox Jewish world, everybody knows that Torah is read with the commentary of Rashi. Because the sages of Judaism give us the guardrails to be able to interpret the words of the Torah in its authentic interpretation, its authentic tradition that has been passed down from the lips of Moses through the generations to this very day. And we always look back onto the commentaries of our sages to guide us through the correct and proper understanding of the Torah. Because when one person comes to learn the Torah, 10 people can read the same verse, and each person gets something different out of it. And that's beautiful. It's not a bad thing that each person comes to their own interpretation. However, the sages, being that they have the chokhmah, the binah, and the da'at, they have the understanding and the wisdom and the knowledge of God, are able to guide us to see what they see. Because they see something that we don't see. And their commentaries help give us a glimpse into the deeper layers of meaning embedded within the plain text of the Bible. Now, without further ado, before we jump into Rashi's commentary, I want to first introduce you to the person of Rashi. Who is he? And why do we rely on his commentary out of all the sages and all the commentaries that have been written on the Torah from the Jewish sages? Why is it that Rashi's commentary is the hallmark, is the go-to, is the most famous one? Worldwide, Orthodox Jews learning Torah always have Rashi by their side to check his commentary to ensure that they are understanding that verse correctly as per tradition. Now, Rashi was actually born in France, and he was born in the year 1040. So that's about 1,015 years ago, to give you a time reference. And he died in the year 1105. So he was about 65 years old in his life. And his name, fully spelled out, is Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki. Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki. When you take the initials of those 3 words, Rabbi, Shlomo, and Yitzchaki, that's Resh, Shin, Yud, you get the name Rashi. So Rashi is an acronym for his name. And he's known as the greatest medieval Jewish commentator on Tanakh, meaning Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, the 5 books of Moses, the books of prophets, and the books of writings, as well as the Talmud. In other words, Rashi is the first to give a full commentary on the entire Talmud and nearly the entire Tanakh. He lived a very simple, humble life, and he supported himself through growing wine and trading. So he was a trader, and he studied in the yeshivas in Germany, specifically in Worms and Mainz, Germany, for those who are interested in the specifics. Now, that's just a very subtle and short description of Rashi's life. It'll give us enough to know at least from whom we are reading, so we can appreciate his commentary that much more. And let's jump into the book of Bereshit, chapter 1, verse 1, followed by Rashi's commentary. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning of God's creating the heavens and the earth, v'haaretz hayta tohu vavohu, when the earth was astonishingly empty, v'choshech al pnei tehom, with darkness upon the surface of the deep, v'ruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim, and the divine presence hovered upon the surface of the waters, vayomer Elohim yehi or, God said, let there be light. Vayehi or, and there was light. Vayar Elohim et haor ki tov, vayavdel Elohim bein haor uvein hachoshech. God saw that the light was good, and God separated between the light and the darkness. Vayikra Elohim laor yom, v'lachoshech kara laila. And he called to the light day, and to the darkness he called night. Vayihi erev, vayihi voker, yom echad. And there was evening, and there was morning, one day. So that is chapter 1, verse 1, until verse number 5. The first 5 verses, they're describing what God did on day number 1 of the creation. Because we know that there are 7 days of creation, beginning with Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, ending with Saturday. Those who know Hebrew will be able to follow much easier. Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, Yom oh my god, I'm forgetting my numbers. Yom Revi'i, Yom Chamishi, Yom Shishi. And then Shabbat is the Yom HaShevi'i. It's the 7th day of the week. The week really revolves around the day of Shabbat. But nevertheless, Sunday, which is Yom Echad, Yom Rishon of the week, the first day of the week, represents exactly that. It represents the first day of creation and the first day of the week. Now, on the surface, these verses are very simple. At the beginning of this whole process where God was creating the world, God said, Yehi or. He said, let there be light, and there was light. And he saw that the light was good, and he separated between the light and the darkness, and he called the light day, and he called the darkness night. And then an evening passes, a morning passes, and boom. That is the conclusion of the first day of creation. What really happened there? What really took place? What was the main event that took place on the first day? Was the revelation of light within the world. Prior to Elohim saying, Yehi or, prior to the revelation of the light in this world, it was just astonishingly empty. The world was tohu vavohu, which means that it was completely chaotic and empty, with darkness upon the surface of the deep, and the divine presence hovered upon the surface of the waters. And it was at that moment that Elohim, the divine name of Elohim, calls out, Yehi or, let there be light, and the light shines, and then he separates between the light and the darkness, and that's what happens on day number 1. So that sounds to be very simple. Now, let's enter Rashi's commentary for me to show you how much more depth and nuance exists when you read between the lines, when you look at the grammar, when you analyze the order and the sequence of the words. It brings you to these insights that you wouldn't have otherwise become aware about. Rashi begins his commentary. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, he says, Lo haya tzarich lehatchil et haTorah ela mehachodesh hazeh lachem. The Torah, which is the law book of Israel, should have commenced with the verse, This month shall be unto you the first of the months. Exodus chapter 12, verse 2. Rashi is pointing out something that most people glance over and they take for granted, which is, why exactly does the Torah begin with the account of creation? If the book of the Torah is meant to be an instruction manual for life, for how a person should conduct themselves within the world, as we all know that the word Torah literally means instruction, comes from the root word hora'ah, which means law or instructions. So if that's what the Torah really is, then why would it be that God chose to start the Torah with an account of how He created the world? Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, day 1, day 2. That's all nice and that's all beautiful and interesting. I mean, I would love to learn how God created the world. But the Torah is meant to be an instruction manual. Therefore, why did He choose to begin with the account of creation? And Rashi is saying that really the Torah should have begun with a mitzvah. It should have begun with a commandment. What's the first commandment given to Israel? Comes from the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verse 2. That this month shall be unto you the first of the months. The mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh, of blessing the new moon, the new month, which is the first commandment given to Israel. That's Rashi's first sentence here. He's saying it's very strange that the Torah begins with an account of creation as opposed to just jumping into giving us laws and giving us instructions, as is what the Torah's main purpose is to guide our actions and what to do. He continues, Shehi mitzvah rishona shenitztavu ba Israel. This is the first mitzvah, the first commandment that Israel was commanded with, Rosh Chodesh. Umatam patach bebereshit. So why did it begin with Bereshit? That, at the beginning of His creation, He said, let there be light. Okay, but why? Mishum koach ma'asav higid la'amo latet lahem nachalat goyim. And he answers the question. The reason that the Torah begins with the account of creation is mishum koach ma'asav higid la'amo latet lahem nachalat goyim, is because He declared to His people the strength of His works in order that He might give them the heritage of the goyim. Listen very closely. There is a verse from the book of Psalms, chapter 111, verse 6, which says that Hashem declared to His people, He told over to His people, the strength of His works. What's the strength of His works? Referring to the account of creation. The strength of His works means the way God created the world. He told Israel the way He created the world. In order for what? In order that He might give them the heritage of the nations. That by Israel recognizing that Hashem is the creator of the world, God created this world, and we know with certainty, with emunah, that Hashem created the world, and therefore the whole world belongs to Him. Rashi continues, there will be a day when the nations of the world will rise up. She'im yomru umot ha'olam le'Yisrael listimatem. And they will accuse the Jewish people that they are robbers, they are thieves. Shekavashtem artzot shiva goyim. That they have stolen the land of the 7 nations, the 7 peoples that used to live in the land of Canaan before we conquered the land of Canaan and established the kingdom of Judaism, the kingdom of Judah, in the land of Canaan, thus transforming it into the land of Israel, right? There will be a day that the nations will rise up and accuse the Jewish people of stealing the land of Israel from those who came before, from those who used to dwell there before they came. Because we all know that the Jewish people's story begins in Egypt. We were slaves in Egypt. And God rescues us from Egypt and leads us to the land of Israel. And He gives us the land that originally belonged to the 7 nations. Right? Those 7 nations that were there in the land of Canaan were, in other words, there was a conflict over to whom this land belongs. Does this land belong to those 7 nations, or does it belong to Israel? And the answer that Rashi is giving us is neither. The land neither belongs to the nations of the world nor to the nation of Israel. Rather, it belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. For should the peoples of the world say to Israel, "You are robbers, because you took by force the lands of the 7 nations of Canaan," Israel may reply, "Kol haaretz shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu hi." All the land belongs to God. Hu v'ra'ah untana la'asher yashar be'einav. He gives it to whomever He deems fit. V'natla uvertzono netala mehem untana lanu. And according to His will, He gives it to a certain people, and according to His will, He takes it from that people and gives it to another people. So that's the logic, the line of reasoning that Rashi is bringing to us as to why God chose to begin the Torah with the creation story, in order that it should be embedded in our psyche, that God created this all, and therefore He owns this all this land, all these territories that we believe belongs to this nation or that nation. History has proven that this land belongs to nobody. God chooses to have this person dwell on that land for a limited amount of time, and history has shown that nobody has remained permanently on any territory. Rather, kingdoms rise and fall, nations rise and fall. These people live here and they get kicked out, and other people move in, they get kicked out later on, and another people move in. No piece of land has ever been eternally tied to a people, because God controls the world and He owns the world and He chooses who lives where. All the wars and the controversies that are happening over the land, conflicts in this world, are really a demonstration that people don't understand. This world belongs to Hashem, not to any king and not to any ruler. And therefore, if the Torah says that the land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel, then the only conclusion is that God chose to bring the Jewish people into the land, and therefore this land belongs to the Jewish people. And therefore the argument, the accusation that the Jewish people have robbed the land of Israel from its previous inhabitants becomes nullified, because no people have the authority to choose who that land belongs. Only God. And that is the first and most famous commentary of Rashi. That's why God started out with the account of creation. Let's pause here before we jump into the second Rashi. For now, we want to digest this, let it sink in, because that really resolves the question. Why really would God start talking about creation? It's nice for us. I mean, I'm very inspired by that. But the Torah is an instruction manual. Give me the laws. Give me the rules. But it turns out that this is the first principle, the first law, the first piece of information that God says, you need to know that this whole land is mine, and therefore I choose that the land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel. And that's the end of the story. That's the conclusion. That's where you place the period and say, I have no argument. I have no longer an argument. No politics, no war, no conflict, nothing can ever reverse the divine role that the land of Israel plays in the Jewish people's mission. The Jewish people need the land of Israel in order to accomplish their mission. Because it is from a place of unity, a place of being together in one area, that the Jewish people become strong and able to help the world and bring blessings for all the nations and be a light unto all of the nations. Rather, whenever we are dispersed across the world, not gathered up in one area to bring unity and love, but rather dispersed all across the world, it is then that we are weak. It is then that we are prone to becoming distracted by the wicked ways of non-biblical cultures, non-Torah and non-Jewish influences that steer our heart away from our mission. They allure our heart and they lure our eyes, thinking that there is something more valuable somewhere else. That's the risk of the Jewish people being dispersed across the world, is that the Jewish people are prone and vulnerable in terms of spirituality, as far as spirituality is concerned. So the ingathering of the exiles back to the land of Israel is not just a political or military effort. Rather, it is a divine prophecy that is unfolding, really, before our very eyes. It is not a coincidence that this kibbutz galiot, this ingathering of the exiles, is happening in our days, because we are in the year 5786 in the Hebrew calendar. There's about 214 years left until the anointed time, the deadline for the Messiah. And we all know that the Messiah can come earlier than its appointed time. For that reason, we're not waiting until the year 6000, but rather we are actively participating and actively putting in the work and the effort that is necessary in order to bring the redemption soon in our days. Yes, I'm very happy and I'm very glad that my children will see the redemption, or my children's children. Either my children or my grandchildren, one of these generations down the line, will merit to see the redemption. And I'm very glad and very comforted by that. But how awesome and how amazing and how beautiful would it be if the redemption were to come in your days? What if you were the generation that was chosen? It's all up to you to do the work, learn your portion in Torah, bring your inner Messiah, and redeem your inner world. Then you have seen the redemption, and you can quickly help others see it too. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something from this class, and I'll see you in the next episode.